Edition of me hiding in my house to do a live stream. Today we are talking about how our strategic reviews help clients get their grants across the pay line. And we're talking specifically about R01 resubmissions. So if you're new around here, I'm Sarah Dobson. I am a research grant consultant, and my team and I help early career researchers get funded at NIH. So let's talk first about the process that we take each of our PIs through in our what we call strategic grant review. And then I'll give you a couple of examples of how specifically we've helped clients improve their scores to the point that they are fundable. So when we work with PIs, we take them through a 3-phase process. And the first phase of the process, and again, we're talking about R01 resubmissions here. So the PIs that we work with have already submitted an R01 and gotten good feedback on their application from the peer review process. And we know that their grant is close, but not quite close enough because their grant was discussed. So when we work with them, first phase of the process is what we call a resubmission strategy session. And that's where we go through the summary statement that they received from the previous R01 submission. And we essentially go through it with them line by line. And in that process, we ask them, do you agree with the critique or do you disagree? And of course, if the PI agrees, we know that they're going to go off and make those changes and refinements to their proposal for resubmission. And if they disagree with the feedback, then we listen really closely to hear what their explanation is as to why they disagree. And that explanation is really useful to us because that forms the basis of the justification for whatever the issue was. That is how you need to be able to justify your choices in your resubmission. And so in that resubmission strategy session, we're listening really closely to especially where the PI disagrees, because we can help make sure that that justification shows up in the right places in their resubmission. So that is the first phase of the process. And next we get into the actual grant review itself. And that happens over an 8-week timeline and 2 rounds of review. And those 2 rounds of review are the next 2 phases of the 3-phase process. So in phase 2 of the process, which is the round 1 of the actual review, that's where we're looking at the big picture of the PI's application. So structure, strategy, argument. And we help them bring out a clear and logical and persuasive argument for why the research ought to be funded, why the PI has the right team in place to be able to do the work, and why the project is feasible. Those are the 3 sort of big picture things that we're helping them work on, while of course ensuring that the scored criteria, the explicit criteria, are also clearly addressed. And of course, because we're working on a resubmission, we're ensuring that any of the critiques from the previous review in each of the scored criteria are being properly addressed in the resubmission. So that's the first round of review. That's the big picture, structure, strategy, argument. Then there's a bit of time in between for the PI to make the changes that we recommend. And then we move on to the second round of review. And that's where first of all, we go back and we take another look at that big picture. Because in all the years we've been doing this, in my experience, what makes the bigger difference in any grant application is that big picture argument rather than any sort of polishing that you do to make your sentences really pretty, for example. So in that second round, the very first thing we do is we go back and we take another look at that big picture, because now the PI has had an opportunity to implement the recommendations that we made, and we sort of see how it reads and see if there are any additional tweaks that we can make to improve the overall quality of that argument. And so once we've done that, that's when we get into the polishing and fine tuning. So yes, of course, we do that, what you would consider more sort of traditional copy editing, but that is the very last thing we do. One, for efficiency's sake, we do it at the very end. And also, again, as I've explained, we do it at the end because our major focus is the sort of big picture strategy and big picture argument, which again makes a much stronger impression and contributes a lot more to the success of the project than that sort of fine tuning and polishing at the end. So the other thing that we do in round two is we take a look at all of the supplementary documents. So of course, we're looking at the intro to the resubmission, the aims page, and the 12-page research strategy. But we also want to see bio sketches. We want to see human subjects or vertebrate animals, depending on what's relevant. We want to see facilities and equipment, all of those documents that typically get ignored and or left until the very last minute, right? Because you're so focused on the key documents. But we really make sure that those documents are tailored to the project that you're proposing, so they're all supporting that main argument that you're making. And that's something that more often than not, we end up doing in the second round of review, but we also do it in the first round if the PI would prefer that. So that is the process. Again, we start with a resubmission strategy session, and then we move into round one of the review, which is structure, strategy, and argument. And then round two of the review is clarity, cohesion, and fine tuning. That's kind of the best way to put it. So that full process takes the review part takes 8 weeks, but then the resubmission strategy session, we urge PIs to just arrange that as soon as possible, so there's enough time to sort of implement the plan that comes out of that resubmission strategy session. So that is the process that that I have developed and refined over years and years of doing this work, and that has resulted in an 80% success rate for qualified PIs who work with us in this strategic review process. So resubmitting a scored R01. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of specifically how that process has helped PIs. So we recently heard back from a PI that we worked with who got a perfect score on her R01 resubmission. She went from an impact score of 37 to 10. Which is absolutely incredible. And one of the things that she said that really helped her specifically is the level of attention that we give to each and every document that she sends into us. And the other thing she said, she's an ESI. And the other thing that she said was that we really helped her to present herself and to write like a principal investigator and not like a trainee, because that was something that she was really struggling with. So in places, especially like her bio sketch and her co-investigators and collaborators bio sketches, we made sure that she presented herself as the leader that she truly was, and that she was describing her work more in line with how a leader would describe their work rather than a trainee. So that's one example. Another example is a client we worked with a little while ago who originally came to us with an impact score of 44. And we were able to bring that score down to 28, which was fundable at NCI. And this PI had some comments and critiques on their previous summary statement related to the level of innovation of their application. And what we were able to do with this PI was to help them explain how, even though the project that he was proposing wasn't innovative in the sort of traditional sense that NIH is looking for, that it was still vitally important research that would set them up well for future highly innovative work. And that argument was successful, obviously, and that PI got funded as well. So that is just a picture of the work that we do with clients in our strategic grant review process, both in terms of the process that I explained, and then in terms of sort of what's possible in how actually we help clients get their grants a fundable score. So if you're interested in working with us on your resubmission, I strongly encourage you to apply. We only work with qualified applicants, and the bare minimum qualification, of course, is that you have an R01 or equivalent grant that was previously scored. We do have some additional qualification criteria to make sure that you are a good fit for the process that I described earlier. And that's what we are able to discover when you complete an application. So if you're interested, please do complete an application. Spots every cycle are limited because, of course, as I explained, we work very, very closely with each PI and we go really deep on their application. So we do have limited spots. So if you're interested, please do submit an application. You can find a link to the application in the video description. All right, see you next time.